So basically, if you're just fully ketotic all the time, you're saying that, hey,
You have to
oh,
avoid so many things in the environment to maintain constant therapeutic ketosis. Therefore, your social interactions change. Your view of the world changes. Your whole mind of yourself in the universe changes. So, this is a very
in what way? Is it because like your social interactions are limited? Because yeah, you can't really go out and have a beer on Friday night and not have a beer and pizza because that's going to kick you out of ketosis.
yes. And
But it's
it's almost like anorexia. You have to be very, very careful because the
right,
anorectic mind has now changed.
sure,
The person has lost a sense of reality.
right,
Why? The only reason we would be in sustained ketosis in the past is because we were starving.
right,
And nobody wants to be in this state. Okay, we were not there because we wanted to be. We were there because this was the situation. All
right,
right. That doesn't mean that to visit the zone periodically is extremely healthy for the body. How
right.
many people living in? We have an obesity epidemic.
Yeah.
All right. These people are not in therapeutic ketosis. Right.
I mean, they're overfilling their energy reserves all the time. I
Yeah.
think it's like the opposite problem that we have
Yeah.
today. That's why you see all these metabolic
Yeah.
syndromes, diabetes,
Yeah.
potentially
Yeah.
Alzheimer's. Yeah, what do you think of Alzheimer's as a metabolic condition?
Oh,
What?
absolutely. It's the reverse of cancer. As a matter of fact, the NCI had a provocative question they put out for people to get grant money on. How come people with Alzheimer's disease have a lower risk of cancer? This is an
Huh?
interesting thing. So we looked into this, and one of my students in the class pointed out that many people who have Alzheimer's are hypometabolic. They have fewer glucose transporters on the surface of their cell. So if
Hmm.
glucose drives cancer and you're not making the door for the glucose to get in, that cell's not going to become a tumor cell. Or if
Right.
it is, it's not going to
Huh?
grow fast. So, and your brain starts to shrivel up because you're not getting the energy that you need.
Exactly. So
The
you,
neurons are dying.
that's right.
Yeah, and so they can't get energy and they die. They can't. They can't. So you use ketones now, but you have to do it
Exactly.
early on. You can't take someone who has Alzheimer's disease and say, "Hey, okay, we'll put you in therapeutic ketosis." That poor guy lost half his neurons anyway. You're not gonna
Right.
raise the dead. You're not going to bring dead neurons back to life.
You might be able to rescue some on that fringe, but you're not regenerating a ton,
Yes.
right?
So the way to delay on Alzheimer's disease is you start this like when you're at your age, right? What you're doing now,
Right.
I'd be I don't know if I'll live to see you get to be really that old, but I would be shocked if you got Alzheimer's disease if you're fasting as much as you're doing, right?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make. I would be shocked if that were. You're delaying the onset of Alzheimer's disease by doing what you're doing, and you're
Right.
also reducing the risk for cancer, type 2
Right.
diabetes, cardiovascular disease.
Right.
This is not good news to the pharmaceutical industry. You don't want to be doing this kind of stuff. You're trying to make
Yeah. No.
money on this.
I think that's like one thing that we've realized that just like how exercise has been baked into basically when we move from the farms to the factories to office intellectual jobs, we started losing more and more of physical exercise in our daily regimens.
Yes.
That's why sensible people today go to the gym. We have to reinstall
Yeah.
working out back into the normal lifestyle,
Yeah.
and eating hasn't changed. And it's like we need to we've always have gone through feast and famine cycles, as you mentioned. We've in starvation periods, feast and famine cycles, and now we have constant consumption.
Oh, yeah.
We need to reinstall fasting
Yeah.
and thinking about therapeutic or nutritional ketosis
Right.
back into the system. So I think it's like I hope that within the next few 5 years, hopefully communities like ourselves, intellectuals, academics like yourself are really out there being like, hey, we should shift how culture
Well,
thinks about all of
yeah, yeah,
this.
but we just all we can do is present the evidence. We can't force people to do this. Let's be honest. We can't just go, hey, you can't be, you shouldn't be there eating that big piece of chocolate cake.
Why not? Why not? I think that's like one thing that we do with our like we have a community called We Fast,
Yeah.
and I think we realize that social proof, social pressure really helps people reinforce their behavior.
Oh, yeah.
The first time I did fasting, it was with my colleagues at NutriBox. It was like, hey, this sounds kind of interesting, sounds kind of nuts, but it was kind of like a fun challenge that we would all do it together.
Yeah.
And then the camaraderie helped us sustain that rhythm. And now like we have tens of thousands of people fasting with us. And I think it's like, so like, I think perhaps it's like folks like us being like, hey,
Yeah.
don't eat that donut, like fast instead. I'm happy to call people out because I think people need to be
I'm
kind of shaken.
yeah, I'm not. I don't like to call people out. I think everybody should have their own. I think it should be self-obvious, but it's like the cigarette industry. People smoke cigarettes for a lot of different reasons. Yeah, it's not healthy for them,
Right.
And people come to realize that, the culture has changed with
Yep.
cigarette smoking. It's much less
Yep.
today than it was, 30 years ago, for sure. But, and lung cancer has dropped a little bit as the result of this. But lung
Yep.
cancer will always be the most common cancer because we breathe in air and there's dirt in the air. The lung is exposed directly to the environment. Our kidneys aren't, but our lungs
Mm-hmm.
are.
Mm-hmm.
So lung cancer will always be the top form of cancer. And it's going to come from just the fact that we breathe air every day. But
Right.
yeah, no, I'm not into. I like people to this realization on their own. Now, of course, there's peer pressure.
Yep.
There's peer pressure to also go and eat a big muffin, and let's go to Starbucks and get a nice cup of coffee and a big jelly filled donut. There's every now and then somebody likes that peanut butter jelly sandwich. Give me a
Right.
break. What are you going to say? Don't eat that peanut butter. I'm going to beat you over the head with your
No,
peanut butter.
but I think that's the standard cultural programming, right?
Yeah.
There's a very clear incentive for these corporations to market like, hey, eat that, big bowl of sugary
Yeah,
coffee.
I think those are other issues that I
Right.
personally have not gotten into.
Right.
Our focus here is to manage cancer. All right,
Right.
that's my key focus.
Yeah.
All the other stuff, if you want to stay healthy and you want to do fasting and you want to do this and you want to do that, that's all wonderful and great. And it helps you. Yes, it will prevent cancer. There's no question about it. You can't get cancer unless your mitochondria are damaged.
Right.
If you're fasting and in therapeutic ketosis, your mitochondria get very, very healthy. So clearly, it's a powerful prevention of cancer. Yes.
Right.
Just like if I don't smoke, it reduces my risk. But going to therapeutic fasting is just not only reducing your risk, it's preventing you from getting the disease. It's not even reducing your risk. It is reducing your risk, but it's also acting as a bulwark against getting the disease.
Right.
But most people, that's good if they have that level of desire. But most people, they get cancer. They come to me and go, "What are you going to do for me now? I have the disease. Oh yes, I
Right.
know I should have been fasting like you do, but I didn't do that. I'm sorry. Please don't. Don't.
Right.
I'm now I have the disease. What are you going to do for me? Well, now we're going to give you metabolic therapy, and we're going to put you into the same therapeutic ketosis. But we can't cure cancer using diet alone.
Right.
The diet is a powerful tool that will put you on the road to management and recovery. But that diet has to be worked together with drugs and procedures that all come together synergistically to kill the tumor cells.
Right. So what is Professor Seyfried's protocol? So you have obviously, beyond obviously there's clearly an index. You mentioned a couple of drugs.
Yeah.
What is the full protocol?
The full protocol, we just published that. It came out. It's called Press Pulse, a novel therapeutic strategy for the metabolic management of cancer. Myself, Dominic D'Agostino, George Yu, an oncologist, and Dr. Joe Maroon, a neurosurgeon from the University of Pittsburgh, are the authors on this paper. And basically, what we do is we Press Pulse is a very interesting concept that comes from the area of paleobiology. And we had these enormous extinctions of organisms throughout Earth's history. But these extinctions only occurred when two very unlikely events came together, coincided. One was a chronic stress on the communities of organisms, killed off a lot, but there was some hardy ones. And the other was an acute stress, like a meteor strike or something like this. And it was only when the climate change and the meteor strike coincided together that it led to mass extermination of all the organisms. So we use that same strategy to kill cancer cells.
If you want to learn how to implement the ketogenic diet and the Press Pulse protocol into your cancer management, just visit school.com/keto for cancer, the new community by our research analyst Johnny Rockermeyer. Within this new community platform, you can connect with other patients and learn from their experiences. You can also just search through the posts other members have already made. You will have access to our classroom section as well, which provides practical advice and tools for the best results. These sections cover all parts of the Press Pulse protocol that you should implement. Starting with the general scientific concepts by Dr. Thomas Seyfried, we will show you how to start the ketogenic diet, including which foods to choose and which to avoid. Additionally, we prepared a list of doctors specialized in metabolic therapy, as well as details about glutamine inhibition and hyperbaric oxygen protocols. So, take a look around at school.com/keto for cancer.
So we put the body in therapeutic ketosis, which is a chronic stress, and then we use drugs and procedures that coincide with the diet to eliminate and destroy the tumor cells, because they have all these genetic mutations which make them non-flexible. They're not hardy and tough. They're on the edge of being exterminated anyway. They're just using so much glucose and glutamine to protect themselves against all the throwing at them. So we remove their shield, put the whole body in this new therapeutic state, and then we use hyperbaric oxygen instead of radiation. And then we use all of these other low doses.
So what is hyperbaric oxygen to
Hyperbaric
clarify?
oxygen is when a person sits in usually a room, or mostly it's like a small chamber, and
Right.
it's under pressure, 2.5 atmospheres at 100% oxygen. And what that does is it dissolves oxygen directly into the blood. Not only does your blood cells carry oxygen, but you can dissolve oxygen directly into the blood. Okay.
Right.
So when you kill cancer cells by radiotherapy or toxic chemicals, you try to kill them by creating reactive oxygen species, ROS, and that
Right.
blows up the cancer cells, right? But you also damage your normal cells using radiation in these drugs, right?
It's like the free radicals. Basically, you
Free
have all
radicals.
these free radicals
Yes.
floating around.
Yes. So what we do is we transition the whole body off to ketones, which protects all of the normal cells against radical damage.
Yep.
So all of our normal cells put up a shield, and the
Yep.
tumor cells now are totally vulnerable because you've removed their shield and taken away their fuels for growth, and now you
Right.
dissolve oxygen in there under pressure. What do you think is going to happen?
Interesting.
He said,
And then also, like, normal cells
Slaughter.
can use ketones and oxygen.
Yeah.
But again, as you mentioned, cancer cells cannot use
No,
oxygen
no.
because they ferment. So all their fuel is gone. You're fueling your healthy
well,
cells.
their dysfunctional mitochondria make a lot of ROS, and
Right.
but their ROS were protected by burning glucose and glutamine.
Okay.
Which builds up their antioxidant profile. So what I'm
Right.
doing is uncovering their shield and then forcing oxygen in there and exploding them. It's a slaughter. It's a magnificent slaughter, but restricted only to the tumor cells. And your normal cells are burning those ketones in the presence of oxygen and getting super healthy. It's elegant. It's magnificent. It's beautiful. Who's doing it? No one. That's the sad part. You go down and tell Dana-Farber about doing something like this, they're going to look at you they're going to think you're nuts.
I mean, is there any clinics that are looking at that? I'm sure there's people that are, forward-thinking doctors being looking at this and saying, hey, this actually might make sense. I want to treat my patients this way.
Yeah, insurance companies won't pay for it. So I mean, you have to realize all this. There's a whole bunch of a lot of crap. You have to walk. So here's the insurance company will allow you to use hyperbaric oxygen only to rebuild your body after being nuked. All right. So your body is like all torn up by being irradiated, but after to correct your body and help your body heal from the radiation, the insurance company will pay for you to sit in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. But
that's really funny.
They will not pay to use the hyperbaric oxygen to kill the tumor cells
beforehand. That's interesting, and it's very silly that you have insurance companies being the middleman for treatment. Yeah. It's a strange system that the insurance companies are now dictating practice rather than the doctors themselves. It's absurd.
It's everybody's backslapping. It's a beautiful system for a payment and for services and all kinds of stuff. And but what's the ultimate goal here? The ultimate goal is to resolve the disease. All right.
Yep.
And we want to do it without harming the patient.
Yeah.
Everybody talks the talk. Nobody walks the walk. All right. You can walk the walk if your interest is in saving lives. Do you want to reduce suffering? Do you want people to get healthy? Do you want to manage their disease in a logical, rational way? And if the answer is no, then we must continue to do what we're doing.
Right.
And if the answer is yes, they're going to throw you out because it's not going to be profitable.
Right. No, it's interesting. So I'm sure there are wealthy individuals that are probably just paying out of pocket to do this. But how do we, what can we do
Here's what we have.
What's the upside? What can we do?
Here's the craziness. You have a lot of wealthy philanthropists, right? That give hundreds of millions of dollars to these cancer centers to do the same stupid thing they've been doing for the last 50 years. Now they're calling it immunotherapy. Oh boy, it's
Right.
the hottest thing now. You see Opdivo. You want to live longer. Look at the TV at night. Guy's driving down the street and he sees the word on the side of a skyscraper. Oh, I'm going to go and take that. And he takes that, and has a better chance of killing you than curing you, right? It blows out your immune system. It causes you to have diabetes. Do all these horrible things. You get one or two people that live longer, and they say, hey, look, you can live longer with this thing. You don't
Right.
realize the adverse effects. So I don't know. One of these guys from Netflix gave $250 million to look at this immunotherapy. And then the moonshot, okay? Joe Biden's moonshot, $100
Right.
million into immunotherapy. Take the money, put it in a capsule, and send it to the moon because it's not going to do anything for the people on this planet.
Yeah.
The absurdity of what we're doing, government and pharmaceutical industries and top medical schools, it makes absolutely no sense. What all this
Right.
stuff. And then we have people donating millions of dollars to the Cancer Genome Project, bringing it and spending all this money for Watson, the big computer,
Right.
the big blue Watson, to come in and try to tell them what all these mutations mean. This
Right.
is the blind leading the blind. This is, as I said, it's going to go down as the greatest singular fiasco in the history of medicine. Once the dust settles on what we've done to these poor cancer patients over the last 50 and 60 years, in time, when we look back, and I'll not be here, but people will look back and they say, this is the greatest singular fiasco in the history of medicine. Being treated with all crazy things when we could have easily done this other metabolic therapy and saved all these lives and reduced suffering in such a profound way. I have no doubt that if we instituted metabolic therapy, we would drop the death rate in cancer by 50% in 5 years. That's a prediction that would absolutely happen. And you can take that to the bank. And I don't care what anybody says. I have the evidence to say that that's what's going to happen. And find out, well, who's going to do that? All right. And you can't get money to do these things. They're supporting all these other nonsensical things.
Right.
So
yeah, what do you think? Like, I mean, it sounds like by speaking out, educating more and more people, we might have a tidal shift between funding sources and all of that. Hopefully, is that what you see as the upside here? Like, you keep basically doing the good work you're doing, communicating, educating people, and eventually the data speaks for itself. I mean, that's our hope.
It's very hard to get money to do this kind of research. We depend on the contributions of small societies. The federal government is not into this. Okay, the pharmaceutical companies are not into this. I mean, what are you talking about here? You're talking about managing a disease with little revenues, and you're this is definitely against the dogma. So get funds like this. We have to go begging, and try to get money to do work on ketogenic diets from the federal government, right?
Right.
It's not part of it. You go to the website of the National Cancer Institute that our tax dollars are supporting, and they say cancer is a genetic disease.
Right.
All right. So what does that mean? That means I've got to be throwing massive amounts of money into immunotherapies and all these other different special drugs that are going to stop DNA replication.
Right.
All this kind of nonsense, and this is where all the money's going. So we're running. Why don't you ask these people who are running for breast cancer, stand up to cancer, run for breast cancer? What are they doing with all that money? It's going for immunotherapy and genetic drugs.
Right.
Right? It's not going to metabolic therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they should demand that money goes to metabolic therapy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big. I mean, yeah, the corporate incentives are just, it's a big system, right? Like 30% of government spending is healthcare, and oftentimes it sounds like it's being kind of wasted on useless on
it keeps
wasted.
the economy going. It's not wasted because we're supporting a lot of people's jobs. Okay, they buy cars, they build houses, they buy furniture, they buy appliances from the money that they're getting. So obviously it's contributing to the success of the economy. So that's why we say we look at cancer patients as a contributor to the growth of the American economy. Right. Yeah, I know it's a terrible thing to say, but basically that's.
But it's true. Yeah, I think people don't tease away the basically like the health. How do we actually save people versus how do we generate revenues?
Let me give you an example. We had a situation, the AIDS epidemic, and I'm sure you're aware of that. And it sprang out of the movements in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. In the 80s, in the mid 80s, people who had AIDS were dying from AIDS. People were dying in large numbers from AIDS, right? Okay, what happened? Why did we cure AIDS or drop the death rate massively in such a short period of time? Because the gay community is so tightly organized. They marched on Washington with the urns of the ashes of their loved ones. and they spread those ashes on the White House lawn. They lay down in the middle of the street. Whoa. And within a year, AIDS is like, what's going on here? Who is marching on Washington for the cancer epidemic? Nobody. Okay,
Right.
because we got breast cancer. They think it's different from brain cancer. They think it's different from lung cancer. It's the same disease.
Well, they feel like they're doing that already with like the breast cancer runs.
Yeah, it's
that energy is being channeled in the wrong way.
Yes,
is
totally.
what we're saying.
Totally. All the tribes need to get together. The brain cancer tribe and the breast cancer tribe and the lung cancer tribes. Right. All the tribes need to get together because it's all the same disease. Right. They still use glucose and glutamine, whether you're a brain or a colon or a bladder cancer. You're using the same fuels. Metabolic therapy will demolish all of these cancers equally. Right. It's an equal destroyer of cancer cells. Doesn't make any difference what organ.
So I'm curious. And so why does it affect? Okay, so what are the differences to have it affect the lungs first versus the brain first versus the pancreas? So why does it occur in different organs?
Well, because so you have to say to yourself what goes on in these organs, right? So you get a pancreatic cancer. So the spread, now there's a metastasis is another issue.
Right.
Okay. Metastatic cells are derived from macrophages. All right. So what happens is you get a bunch of cells in a particular organ and they start proliferating because their energy metabolism is altered and they're going back to the alpha period and they're proliferating. We have immune cells in our body that sense this. They say, what's going on here? They see some cells proliferating. So we have immune cells like macrophages and leukocytes, and they come in. Their job is to put out the fire and try to say what's going on. So they put growth factors to heal the wound. That's like throwing gasoline on a fire. They're doing their genetically programmed activity in the wrong context. So what happens? These cells grow even faster. So to put out the fire more, some of these cells fuse with these other cells. They're fusogenic. Now, when you say cancer spreads, okay, you had a breast tumor, the poor woman has breast cancer, and now all of a sudden it's in her lymph nodes, and it's in her lung, and it's in her liver, and it's in her brain. Where the hell did that come from? Those cells that are fusing, macrophages patrol our body in our bloodstream. And what happens is they exit and enter the bloodstream all the time to try to repair things. But when you corrupt that cell, it now does that, except it spreads all over. It's dysregulated. The macrophages are militia in our body. Okay, They patrol our body, kill bacteria, they make ourselves healthy. They're like the Marine Corps. They're either your best friend or your worst enemy.
Okay.
And when they become corrupted, you've got metastatic cancer, and then you're throwing all these things at these, and they love glutamine and they love glucose.
Yeah, how do you spread the mitochondrial damage? So if a corrupted macrophage, how does that? So like if it's started in the brain or whatnot, and it moves to the pancreas.
Yeah.
How does a macrophage transfer? Is it the mitochondria?
Yeah, you have proliferating cells that can't metastasize. They're growing, but they can't spread. Right. But the macrophage is already genetically programmed to do all that stuff.
Yep.
So it fuses, and now its energy metabolism becomes corrupted. It goes back to the alpha period.
Like the mitochondria trade back and forth, maybe, like, or is it like...
You got to be careful. Macrophage versus mitochondria. Macrophage is the immune cell, but the mitochondria are the energy generators
within the cell itself.
Yeah. So when those energy generators get corrupted, this cell now becomes crazy. But this
so basically when it fuses, some of the mitochondria shift into the...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I was asking about.
There's a dilution. So you start diluting the normal mitochondria with the abnormal mitochondria.
And it picks up the bad mitochondria, fuses somewhere else, and it shifts. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
In a cell that's genetically programmed to spread throughout your whole body.
Okay.
And they're tough to kill, baby. I tell you, they're tough to kill. But we know what they eat. And when you know what they eat, you can kill them.
Right.
It's a beautiful game. I'll tell you, when you understand the biology of the disease, it's so elegant how you can kill these cells without harming the rest of the body. Once you know, but when you go down to the top medical schools, they don't know anything about this. And if they do, they say, well, it's not well established, because they don't read the literature. If they read the literature and studied this thing, they'd say, oh my God, this is what we should be doing.
Yeah, I have a lot of folks that have gone through medical school right now. I mean, I think they're very much trained within a system, right? They're very rarely being taught the basic biochemistries of all these diseases. It's more like, okay, this is a condition. These are like the state-of-the-art treatments. And they have like 4 hours of nutrition across all of medical school.
Nutrition is not the issue here. And this is what
nutrition is a side effect. But I think like the core fundamental biochemistry of why there's dysfunction within these cancer cells. I mean, it sounds like yeah, it's not from a genetic mutation necessarily. That's a second. That's like a approximate cause to the primal cause of metabolic.
I think you have to. It's a complicated situation.
Right.
But there's a path. There's a clear path to the resolution. People just have to know about it. They have to adjust. They have to adjust and adapt to what they're doing, and then I'm sure that this whole situation would be remarkably improved. It's just that how are you going to do it?
Right.
What are you going to do? Go out and scream at the top of the roof? I put as many papers as I can. People read the literature. They can come to their own decisions about this. There's still a lot of controversy about it, but it's based on hard evidence. So I think people need to know about this.
Yeah. What's the best way our listeners and our community can learn more about your work? I mean, or any other projects that we can help support? And please feel free to shout out some of the current things you're working on right now.
I think the best, Travis Christofferson has set up a foundation called Single Cause, Single Cure Foundation. And it was based on his book, the best-selling Amazon book, Tripping Over the Truth, The Metabolic Theory of Cancer. Right. And his book is getting a lot of rave reviews. He took what I wrote, which was very technical and deep, and he went out to interview scientists, geneticists, and people at these different universities to hear what they had to say. And he basically came to the conclusion that cancer is, in fact, a metabolic disease. And why don't people know about this? So he set up a foundation to support this kind of research. And people have been making contributions. It's the only foundation. One of the only. I think George Yu has a small foundation down but that's dedicated specifically to metabolic therapy for cancer. You don't find that at the NCI or any of these other places. And if they do, you'd say, oh, yes, we support a lot of cancer metabolism. It's genes that control the metabolism, not the metabolism controlling the genes. Right. And it's also, how do you resolve? Are we going to spend another 200 years figuring out how one gene is turned on or off by a glucose or a glutamine? Why don't we just resolve the disease and then we can worry about those things later? Right? People think you can't resolve. Oh, cancer is so complicated; it's going to take us 100 years. That's nonsense. This disease can be managed very quickly, very shortly, in a very short period of time. If they adapted press pulse therapies that I open access. Anyone can go to the literature. Anyone can go online and read the paper for themselves. It's open access. Just go online and read it. Press Pulse, Novel Therapeutic Strategy for the Metabolic Management of Cancer. Lays it out right there. And my physicians in different countries that are not yoked by the medical establishment, have more flexibility, are proving that that is a way to resolve cancer, or at least reduce death quickly, keep people alive in a very high state of health.
Yeah. Thanks for the time. I mean, is there any other sort of last ideas or thoughts? I think we covered good ground around, your theories, your evidence, and your trajectory. I was also just curious, how did you even, what was your story around breaking through the dogma? I think from a personal level. I mean, you were very much educated in the same doctrines as everyone else. What was the different? Why were you the one to call out the system?
Well, I can call the system out because I have a tenured position, and that's why people say, "Oh, get rid of these tenured people." Don't forget President Nixon. He said the worst thing that he dealt with tenured professors, because you have a voice, you have a position. Right. And then you can make these comments about, and you come to a realization in your own life. And when you have the opportunity to see things don't make sense and what people are doing, and you have an opportunity to say something about this without losing your job. Because if you're at a medical school and your job depends on you getting the next grant, and that grant is depending on cancer as a genetic disease, what are you going to say? It's not a genetic disease. You lose your grant, you lose your job.
Yep.
Right? So you're yoked into the system. You can't speak out, because if you speak out, you're going to be eliminated.
Yeah.
Right? So
100%.
I don't have to worry about that.
But what was the initial insight? I mean, just to even go down this path.
No. It took years to come to this realization.
So you were just looking at the space, why is this? Why is all our resources not working? And it just slowly.
No. We worked in epilepsy for years. We were working with ketogenic diets. We knew the concepts of the diets. We knew what was happening physiologically. We were studying tumor. We were studying lipids in cancer. We were studying. I developed some of the best animal models for metastatic cancer that exist. I mean, the tools that we developed allowed us to see things that others weren't able to see.
I see.
Okay, so it's a constellation of a lot of things coming together that required decades of observation. Okay, 3 to 5 decades of me looking at things. Okay, so and having all these other convergences, and then you come to this realization that this whole system is upside down, and you're obligated to say something about it because you know, and then you have hard evidence to support what you're saying. Okay, you've done experiments to substantiate and validate what you're saying. People need to know about this. You test those on humans and you get the same thing you see in the mouse. Okay, why don't we do it to a large number of people? So then you're up against all these brick walls, firewalls, and then you're up against policy and institutions and this kind of thing. And then you find yourself where we are today. So we know what the solution is. We know how to do it, but the system, the way it sits today, doesn't allow it.
Yeah, hopefully, you know, folks in Silicon Valley, in our community, with broad platforms that are just more forward thinking, I think, with hopefully we can, you know, help push this message out there. Because I think, I fast personally, right? And a lot of the basis of that is based on a lot of your research and your understanding of why this could potentially help me, you know, down the line. So I think it's a moving trend. And I think we have responsibility as people that are a little bit ahead of like disseminating this knowledge to really spread it out to everyone. Because I think it can help it will help everyone if people were more thoughtful, at the very least, about their everyday behaviors and how to treat these conditions.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. And I think that you're just doing it because you understood what was happening as a prevention level, and you've experienced this.
Right.
But when you don't, so many people are not in your position, and they're diagnosed with cancer, and they go to the top UCSF or wherever, they're expecting to be treated by people that actually understand the nature of the disease.
Right. They're scared. They want to listen to an expert, and like they're not going to overthink it because they're scared. They're scared to die.
Yeah. So, and unfortunately, they're given these pancreatic cancer people and brain cancer, and they're just being mistreated. And it's mistreated by the system not coming to the realization of what the biology of the disease is.
Absolutely.
And that's where it is. It's a very frustrating situation because I can see what's going on. It's very clear to me. So, you know, it's like, you know what's going on. You know how to solve the problem. And yet people aren't doing it.
Let's all work together to help change it. I mean, I think that's like what we put up the good fight for.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.